With the Sunrise on the Reaping teaser trailer dropping just a few days ago, I'm here today to give an in-depth frame-by-frame breakdown and analysis. With the movie coming out in just a year, I think this was a great first look. Full spoiler warning here, as I will be discussing major plot points from the book to try and match up each scene. But with that warning, let's jump straight in. We start out at the District 12 reaping, Drusilla being wheeled out, and we see the reaping bowls as Drusilla announces, "Welcome Panam to the glorious reaping of District 12. Some details here that I wanted to note was the progression of the reaping. The area in District 12 where the reaping takes place seems to be in a mid-stage of construction between the 10th and the 75th reapings we see. We also see these on the wall, which I think are the TVs, which more closely resemble the ones we see in the capital in the 10th games compared to the big ones on the square we see in the 75th games, though the aspect ratio is a bit different from the original 10th ones. We can also see this banner of President Snow saying Panam's #1 peacekeeper in the top left corner, which is from the books. We also see the slips of paper in the bowls are orange here, which is new. The peacekeepers here also look like a cross from the grey uniforms we saw in the 10th games to the white uniforms we see later on in the movies. And they have now adopted the mask they wear later on, though to me it looks more like a gas mask than anything else. Maybe this is just a capital design choice, or maybe it's to do with all the coal in District 12. I don't know. Drusilla is in an outfit like the book describes, which is meant to be a take on an officer's jacket with a feather headpiece. However, here it seems to be an actual bird, which I guess ties in with the themes of birds throughout the series. I did check though, and it doesn't appear to be a mockingjay or jabberjay. Then we move on to our first shot of the arena. In the background here we can hear the 4-note mockingjay call and then Drusilla announcing twice the number of tributes, twice the glory. We can see all the tributes lined up around the cornucopia, the spokes here being flower beds, and from a bird's eye view I would imagine this looks a bit like a flower. We can see a meadow and a mountain backdrop as described in the books. Opposed to the 75th games where we had the traditional woods and the dark colour palette associated with survival and danger, here we have a bright, colourful, optimistic setting, which is purposely jarring to the actual actions and intentions of the games, where everything looks like it is beautiful in the arena is actually poisonous or deadly in some way. Also, the tributes are wearing white in these games with robes that reminded me of ancient times, back in the days where there were gladiator fights and everything was about honour and glory, something which Panam tries to push forward in their propaganda about the games. Another thing I wanted to point out here is that the cornucopia is on a hill, and the way the tributes are laid out, some will have to run uphill to get the weapons, and others just run straight on flat ground, which doesn't seem very fair to me. Not that the capital would care, but this is bothering me a lot throughout the trailer. And then we see the inside the cornucopia, which has a sunrise pattern on the inside, mirroring obviously the name of the book, Sunrise on the Reaping. And inside we have some white backpacks rather than the obvious array of weapons. Again, a very stark contrast to the 10th and the 75th games where the weapons are very obviously laid out and everything felt very obviously dangerous. Here things are meant to feel peaceful, clean and bright, juxtaposing the reality of what is about to happen. Here we see the tribute next to Haymitch, which we see later is Panache, throwing off his jacket, showing he's ready to run straight into the fight. I guess it's lucky here that it didn't land on his platform, otherwise it would have blown him up, as we know this from the other games. Unless they haven't added this feature yet at this point in the game's timeline. Anyway, then we see Lulu looking around, Ampert looking concerned and then giving a nod to Haymitch and looking more reassured, and Haymitch nods back. As described in the book and then later by Katniss watching the recap of the games, most of the tributes seem distracted by the view, and they're all looking around just trying to take in the surroundings. We see different colour accents on the different districts' outfits. Haymitch, Lulu, Maisley and Wyatt from 12 are in coal black, Ampert from 3 is in electric blue, and Panache and Silka from 1 are in this yellow colour, which, if we're following the book, I think is meant to be more of a greeny yellow, as we know Maisley laughs calling it snot green colour. Then we get to the countdown as the screen separates into these different blocks, reminding me of a newscaster intro. There is this orange filter over parts of this, maybe signalling the sunrise, maybe the later volcano, maybe the haze of colour and beauty in the clear shots distracting them from what is really happening. Or maybe I'm just reading too much into this. For 10, we see Panache again taking off his jacket ready to run into the cornucopia. For 9, we see Maisley wearing her token necklace. For 8, it's a layer of flowers in a circle shape similar to the cornucopia. And I think this is really probably is just me seeing things here, but can anyone else see the face here in the flowers? Is it just me? Probably. Then in the number 8, we see Haymitch and Lenore Dove appear. For 7, we see this wide shot of the arena by the lake and 2 tributes walking. By a later shot, we can see this is Haymitch and Maisley, I think when they are walking to find the edge of the arena. In the number 7, we see Maisley's token necklace, which becomes important later on in the plot and the rebellion storyline. Then for 6 is Silka readying up for the start of the games. She blows on this ring she has as if for good luck. I'm assuming this is her token. For 5, we see Wyatt at the opening. Interestingly, he's the only single tribute countdown shot not to be the centre of focus in the shot, with other tributes also in the frame here. Perhaps as the odds maker, he's taking all the others in and devising probabilities. Again, maybe I'm reading way too much into this, but it's fun, so I will continue. For 4, we see Haymitch and Lulu walking over to some plants, probably early on in the games. It's worth noting here that Lulu dies by a poisonous bee balm plant. Is this that plant? We shall see. In the number 4, we see another Lulu, except I think this may actually be Luella. This shot looks like it takes place before the games based on the little I can make out from the background and the different outfits she is wearing, maybe in the apartment they're staying at beforehand. And I think the actress looks a little bit more like the actress for Luella than Lulu. But it is a very obscured and poorly lit shot here, so you can't really tell, which sadly is kind of the point of Luella and Lulu for the capital. Let me know what you think. For 3, we see another shot of Haymitch and Maisley walking through the arena. Again, I think this is their walk to find the edge of the arena, as we see foliage framing the shot here, which I believe is the hedge maze that they go through. In the number 3, we see the District 12 salute, their signal for goodbyes and funerals, possibly taken from the funeral scene in 12 at the end of the story, and later the symbol used for rebellion. Fitting, as a large point of these games is trying to break the arena and enact a rebellion, and the capital trying to cover it up. For 2, we see this very cropped shot of Haymitch's face, which opens up as he looks away. Honestly, at first I thought this part was fire from the volcano, but it turns out it's just his hair under the orange filter. I think it's interesting here that he's turning away from the orange filter. I'm not sure that's meant to symbolise anything. Let me know if you have any thoughts. And lastly, for number 1, we go back to the wide shot of the cornucopia as Drusilla calls out, "Let the 50th Hunger Games begin." I wonder if this is just a continuation from the earlier dialogue for this first teaser trailer based on what they've already filmed and shot, or if she's actually going to be the announcer for this film adaptation. I think it's probably the former. We see Haymitch with panache and Silk on either side of him, and someone who, from the brown accents on the cloak, I'm guessing could be from District 12, maybe Regina or Autumn. They're the 2 girl tributes. As they run down to the cornucopia, Panache pushes Haymitch out of the way, and we also see Silka trip over behind him. Then we have a shot of the sun rising on the reaping over the mountain, followed by a shot of snow. We can see his signature white rose lapel. Unfortunately, this depiction of snow from the adaptations we've already seen and what I have in my head just doesn't really match up to snow for me. He does kind of look more like a founding father here, but anyways, moving on. It's still a good shot. We see Plutarch behind him on the right and some sort of guards. They don't look like the general peacekeepers we saw in the District 12 shots, and they look more like they could be commanders or some other higher status. They look more similar to the commanders we saw in the District 12 base in Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes. Also, we can see Snow holding a piece of paper here as if giving an announcement. Maybe in the movie they will include the reading of the card, or perhaps this is some other announcement, maybe the opening of the games or after the games is finished. It looks quite a solemn occasion, however. Then back to the arena, and this is Haymitch and Ampert, and I think this blue thing covered up with the flowers is the entrance to the underground of the arena. This is the map portal, which is hidden intentionally by the game makers under the flowers as a berm, which BT told Ampert about. Both seem sad as they hug. Maybe this is them saying goodbye to each other as Haymitch goes down to try and blow up the water tank. Then we have another wide shot of the arena with a figure running. I believe this is Haymitch, probably near the start of the games, as he is still wearing the robe that they're all wearing at the start, whereas later we can see he takes it off, and the meadow also looks similar to the starting setting. Then a shot of Plutarch in District 12, and I believe this is Haymitch in the bottom right. For a second I thought this might be Sid, Haymitch's younger brother, given the height difference, but the hair does look more like Haymitch. I think this is when he comes over to try and get their reaction shots from the tributes families. You can also make out another one of these officials in grey here, similar to in the previous shots, so I think these are commanders of some sort. Then we move on to Lenore Dove and her geese in the meadow playing music as Haymitch approaches. I think it's worth noting the framing here is the same as Coriolanus coming over to find Lucy Gray in the meadow in Songbirds and Snakes. We see him receive the Flint Striker, which has the songbird and the snake on it and is a rainbow colour, the same as Lucy Gray's rainbow snakes, but also matching to the colours of a flame. I wasn't sure on the outfit here, as it's not Haymitch's reaping outfit, which we clearly see in the next shot and the official thumbnail for the trailer, but there also seems to be no appearance of the signature burlap sack courtesy of the Capitol shorts. So unless he changes out of them quickly before singing Lenore Dove and then changes again into his reaping outfit, but that seems quite unlikely. But I can't imagine they'll leave this iconic item of clothing out, because it is quite a signature now and it's a funny joke. Next we see Haymitch and Sid sat on a bed in the house. Again, here Haymitch is wearing his reaping outfit, and Sid is dressed up smart too, though he's not in the reaping. In the books, Sid gives Haymitch a flint for his birthday, which he then uses to show Sid the Flint Striker, so I think this is what is happening here. This whole story is filled with imagery of sparking a flame to start a fire as they try to break down the arena and make the first attempts at rebellion, which 25 years later is finally fulfilled in Catching Fire. They emphasise later that Katniss is only able to get the revolution to take off as it's been building up for such a long time, and the spark is finally ready to ignite. These two books also have a lot of the same characters in, which we'll get to see now in this movie. Next is Haymitch and Lulu sparking the flint starter onto a plant. I think this is the gas plant they mention in the book, which is actually a real plant apparently. Then we get our first look at a young Effie Trinket as she comes to save the costume disaster for the interviews. I love her style here, as it isn't as flamboyant as her later looks, but still hints to her later fashion choices by the butterfly necklace she is wearing. Her aesthetic here nods to the 1920s fashion for me. I think this is a prep team behind her, which I am unsure these are the same two people we see at the reaping. I'm not sure if it is, but it's quite hard to tell, so let me know what you think. And also we see a peacekeeper here. Then we see Haymitch and Maisley breaking through the hedge to reach the edge of the arena. The hedge acts as an intentional barrier and Haymitch has to torch it through to break it, hence it appears burnt out here. Then we see the two after they break through. Maisley appears to have some kind of wounds on her face and neck here, and I think this might be from the ladybugs, which were stationed to stop people breaking through the hedge maze and attack anyone who tried, so they come out and attack and sting the two. Then we see a shot from the final battle of the game at the edge of the arena where Silka comes after Haymitch with an axe. I think this here is the edge of the cliff that Haymitch is approaching. Then we see Silka running, though this is at the start of the games, a little Plutarch's card stacking editing here. Then a shot of Haymitch entering the mud portal at night after the earlier shot we saw of him and Ampert. Then we see a fight between Haymitch and Panache. This takes place in the book just before Maisley shows up to aid Haymitch. In this fight, while the wearing and Panache's shield reminds me again of the gladiator fights and the propaganda the games are trying to push of fighting for honour and glory. We quickly go back to the reaping where Drusilla takes a sip of something from a glass, and then, contrastingly, we go back to Haymitch fighting in the arena. Based on the blue, I'm guessing this is someone from 3 or 4 who are both described as wearing a shade of blue, but I can't remember Haymitch explicitly fighting anyone from those districts, so I'm not sure who this is meant to be or where this takes place. Maybe they just changed around a few details in the fights of the background tributes. Let me know if this is a canon fight in the book that I've just forgotten about. Then we move on to the shots I think we were all most surprised to see in this trailer. The fire. This takes place right at the end after Haymitch returns to District 12 and he finds his house with his family inside ablaze. I think these two people here could be our first looks at Burdock and Astrid, Katniss's parents and Haymitch's friends. The physical descriptions match, and if this is Astrid, the white outfit here would fit with her working in the apothecary. We then see Haymitch back in the arena screaming, presumably after the death either of Ampert, Maisley, Lulu or Welly. Then we get the final shot which we knew about since Catching Fire of the volcano exploding, as it destroys the seemingly perfect world the game makers have made. Though, if you think about it, volcanoes often are associated with rebirth and restoration after initial disaster, which could be parallels to the rebellion taking place. Here we hear a line from Catching Fire from the grown-up Haymitch, just as we did with Snow in the Songbirds and Snakes trailer, as Woody Harrelson gives his line, "I think these games are going to be different." Which is very fitting given what we know about the parallels of these games and Catching Fire games. I will point out this blue light here, which I'm not really sure what it is. Maybe a campfire, the cornucopia, or another mud portal, which I think was described as having blue lights down in it, but it doesn't really look like any of these, so I'm not entirely sure. Then it ends with a rendition of the animation we see for each movie, here with the Songbird and Snake Flint Striker. And that's the end. Overall, I thought this was a great teaser trailer. It didn't give too much away, but gave us a good look at a lot of the characters and locations we've been looking forward to. And with the theme of the arena in these games, I think the trailer captured this tone really well. Let me know what you thought of this trailer and if you enjoyed this breakdown. It is my first time doing a trailer breakdown, so let me know if this was a good length and level of detail. And if you would like more, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.